Hey BookTube, Chelsea, the Learning Outlaw here to do a Let's Talk video. It's been a little bit since I've done one of these. So as always, go ahead, fetch yourself a beverage, pull up a comfy seat, and let's talk. I wanted to talk today about something that came from a Twitter thread that I was chatting in and participating in last night as I was like wrapping up watching the Hugos. But it is essentially this idea of origin stories. Specifically, this came up out of a conversation of like genre-specific origin stories and the dominant narratives that become origin stories that we hear like from a community of genre readers. But also that bled to me into issues of like gatekeeping and self-confidence and this weird kind of like retroactive FOMO. And I just kind of wanted to like pick it apart with y'all here on video, as I am wont to do. So essentially, this came from a thread that I saw that Danny had posted from the Literary AF podcast. I'll leave a link to it down below, where she was talking about how she doesn't share the romance origin story of stealing her mom's books and like reading them covertly and like having that be her entrance into the genre of romance, and how she felt like that was so much of the dominant narrative, or a narrative that she'd heard so many times, and just like the feelings that that gave her, which sparked, of course, feelings in me. And so, because I also don't share that origin story. And while Danny and I don't necessarily feel like the same on it, I kind of took her idea and ran with it in my own lens of like, not actively, but there are times within this community that I have felt at a loss or felt at a disadvantage, or that something was lacking because I didn't share that origin story. As the day went on and as this Twitter thread kind of unraveled, I realized that like, that is not, like, that is a dominant narrative, but not necessarily an accurately dominant narrative. And I feel like that could be for a whole bunch of other reasons, whether it's like the continued familial legacy and the like reliance on that, or if there's this like women supporting women intergenerational idea, or if it's because that is just a story that appeals to a lot of people. And so it's the narrative that we repeat over and over again. Like, I'm not entirely sure why, but it's the narrative that I've most frequently heard when it comes to people telling like their romance origin stories. So basically, since I don't have that, since my origin story is that like I was fresh out of library school, I was working in a library, I was tired of reading things that were assigned. I was hearing over and over again about this like about Tessa Dare and Sarah MacLean and this new kind of group of emerging authors who were doing this thing with romance that was kind of new and different. And so I checked that out and of course opened the door and never looked back. And I love that story because that origin story for me gave me exactly what I needed at the time I needed it. Like, I am a full believer of like your life unfolds along the path that it unfolds on in a way that will give you the things you need when you need them. So I don't regret that. But at the same time, I have felt before an internal lack of something that I don't share that narrative. And I think it is mostly internal, but because it is this kind of communally dominant narrative, there's an external force to it too. And this becomes like extra complicated because I originally come from an SFF background. Like, I fell into romance because it was so different from all of the things that I had been reading in my free time previously. Like, obviously I was assigned things for library school, but I was reading so much young adult, and specifically so much young adult like SFF, because that was my purchasing area, that like I wanted out of that. And SFF, as y'all know, is like my baby, my home. I love it just as much as I love being in romance, but it's a very different community. And there are huge gates that are kept by asshole gatekeepers. I mean, that's the thing, is like there aren't gates, but you guys know what I'm saying. Like, the entry bar into SFF fandom can seem to be so much higher because there are people, specifically dudes usually, who are willing to gatekeep you, who are willing to pop quiz you, who are willing to true fan you, and who are willing to kind of set up this fandom that's very curative and collective. So if you don't know all the things, if you haven't been there from the beginning, if you're not old school, if you're new, like, you have to prove your stomping grounds in a lot of places, or people will make you feel that. That is changing. I feel like as an adult, I am seeing less and less people do that, or I'm seeing a far more active like pushback to that within the community as like marginalized voices and women and queer people and people like, as all of that continues to like grow within the publishing community, that like white, cis, heterosexual, able-bodied, middle class, usually male, like those are usually the boxes that get ticked with gatekeepers. And so it's like, it's different in romance, right? Like, I've never felt the same kind of gatekeeping here. The romance community is so welcoming and will throw open doors. And if you are new, you will be awash with recommendations. People are so excited. And I love that too. Like, I do that too. I know that bug. I have done that to people who have come to me now and say, I am new in romance. What do you recommend? And I have lists and catalogs and authors and whole bookshelves of things that I can recommend to these people. And I love to do that. But there's this thing that happens in all communities that strikes a chord in me, that scratches at a place in me that's deeply uncomfortable, which is if a thing is happening and an entire community says, oh, but remember this collective memory when this thing happened and we all who were here were doing this thing and this is how we as a community reacted and interpreted that. And I wasn't like there for that, so I don't have an active memory or ability to participate. Like, that lack and that loss like really scratches at a thing inside me. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like a confidence thing. I don't know if it's just remnants from that curative fandom background that I think is deeply unhealthy and like really deeply rooted. I don't know where that comes from, but it's a reaction that I have. And it's one that I'm always kind of trying to pick apart. And I want to end this video. This is really just navel gazing. We're just talking. We're let's talking. That's all we do here, guys. In these videos, we navel gaze. But I want to end this video by saying that the thread ended up becoming something that was really meaningful to me. Like, it started that way, but it really kind of became this different thing because I had several people speak up and say that I was the person. Like, I was the person, or the podcast was the thing. We were the people that like got these people into reading romance. And I am not used to that. I am still very much, I feel like I am still, to use the analogy we were using in the thread, like, I'm still the freshman here. Like, I'm still walking along through the halls and trying to make sense of the senior classes in jokes and knowing that one day I'll be the senior class and I'll have my own in jokes. But right now, just feeling very kind of like included in a way that feels almost removed. And not all the time. It's not all the time. It's only when certain things happen or certain books come up. And that's why I'm trying to use my new Sexy Saturday series to like explore those books and form my own opinions now, because I obviously don't have the nostalgic background, but I can still be able to participate and form an opinion of those things. But yeah, it's a thing. And people came and told me that like I was the metaphorical senior to their freshman. And that just really like pulled me up a little bit and made me realize that it is all about perspective. And at the end of the day, it's all about the individual journey and the way that a person is able to make their individual journey contribute to the larger history if they want to, if they choose to. So yeah, I am a romance reader who didn't start reading romance until I was 25. And I found it in library school. My very first romance ever was, my very first adult romance that like, I'm not counting young adult stuff. There's a whole nother video on young adult and fan fiction background that like I can get into, because those are like my true roots in loving stories that focused on emotion and relationships and internal lives and characters. But my first adult romance, the thing that I feel made me a quote romance reader, was a Sarah McLean book. Hi, I'm me. That's my story. And I love it, but I'm still dealing with not having a story that is the dominantly narrative one, for whatever that says. So yeah, I know that lots of you out there also have a similar story, who also came to romance super late. If you want to let me know your romance origin story down below, please do. I love hearing them. The more stories we hear, the more normalized all the different varieties become. But yeah, that's my Let's Talk today. So let me know down below how you're doing. Come find me on social media. If you've watched almost 10 minutes of this video, please just leave me your favorite emoji. I know coming up with the energy to leave an entire comment can be really tough. Thank you so much to Sylvia for that idea. And otherwise, let me know what you're doing and what you're reading. And until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have happy reading. Bye, guys.